Okay, we're back.
Are we?
People are going to join, I'm sure, but we can go ahead and take it from where it was. I'm not going to restart the whole thing where we were at. So we're just going to have to power through since YouTube's given us trouble tonight.
All right. Well, let
Which
me
really sucks 'cause
let me reprime the question.
Yeah, let's
So
reprime it.
we were talking about doing the maintenance that you don't want to do, and I was picking on Andrew and saying that we know that he doesn't like to do the maintenance because he likes the bright, shiny new things.
Right.
And I was also saying that Andrew won't do the maintenance just because you ask him to do the maintenance. If Andrew's doing the maintenance, then Andrew has learned the hard way that he must do the maintenance. And so what I want to hear about is Andrew's relationship with the maintenance that he does, in fact, do.
Yes, okay. Yes, I hate doing maintenance. I hate the day-to-day. I hate, no offense to you fine people, I hate like showing up every day and fulfilling orders. It's not the work that bothers me, but rather the fact that there's the lack of something new and novel, and my ADHD brain can't seem to take it. It feels physically distressing to do something I don't want to do. And as I was telling Charles just a second ago, you all know me. At least the people here at this table know me as someone who will definitely cut the nose off my face, or cut my nose
The
off
way
to spite
that
my
I
face.
like to say it is, so I tell Andrew, hey, you see that foot right there that's attached to your leg? You should really not shoot it. And then he looks you right in the eye and he says, oh, this foot right here. And then he picks it up and he points it at you and then he shoots it. And he said, yeah, what? What? I just shot that foot you told me not to shoot.
Well, so-
And then I say, I don't know why I talk to you.
There is that. It's I've always. My mother said that I have been. Smitha, what is it? What does she say?
Defiant against authority since
Oh well, okay, yeah. So I've definitely been defiant against authority, and anytime someone shows any inkling that they might have authority over me, I will find a way to show them that they don't have authority over me, and that includes maintenance and cleaning and all these other tasks, right? But seriously, no, I don't like the day to day. I'm not the grind kind of guy. I like the new and novel stuff, but yes, I have gone to the point where I've found so many new and novel things and not done the maintenance on them that they all fall apart, and then you get no enjoyment out of anything. And so I've learned that there are there are things that I just must do, and I must learn to make that sacrifice. And then B, there are ways around doing things that I don't want to do, and so I usually just set up as much of that as possible, and then when I have to do something, then I just sit there and bear it, and then find some way to fix the problem in the long term, so that I don't have to do it anymore. So that's...
So to frame this positively, Andrew is really good at starting things. And he's also really good at finding people with the gift that he can delegate that can maintain the things that he starts.
Yeah, I like that better. So we are still, the stream is still going, but we are lagging again. So he says you're lagging again.
Yeah, Blaine.
Anyways, we'll keep going until it tells me that the stream's actually bad on our side, because otherwise the lag will just catch up as it buffers. But yes, Amanda, that's a very positive way of putting it for me. So I appreciate it. It does make me sound a little bit better. Someone did just say, Andrew, just think of it as each item that goes out is money in your pocket, and that's how you overcome your ADD. Except that doesn't work. That doesn't work. No amount of future promise motivates me. I don't know why. Seriously, like...
That's something that interests you, that you find genuine...
Oh, I'll do for free all day long, and I'll
intrigue.
exhaust myself on. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird. Money just doesn't motivate me the way it motivates other people. Interest motivates me far more.
So you did talk about what I think is like one of the most key aspects of this is if you take on too much, you can't maintain all of it.
No, absolutely.
And so then things start to collapse.
Mm-hmm.
And what you have, let's go back to St. Ron Swanson, right? And the, whole ass one thing.
Yep.
Right? So, that right there might be a better aphorism than what I wrote. Once again, just read other people's writing. It's better than mine.
Just so you guys know what it is, it's don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. So
And
I think that
will
was
say,
implicit.
I just wanted to make sure.
I will say that Charles is being far too humble here. You should absolutely read his writing.
So, but Andrew's talking about the trap that people fall into with the shiny new thing, the trap that people fall into when they don't prioritize the maintenance. So they take on a new thing and the old thing collapses. And one of the big things I'm trying to emphasize, so if you haven't heard of it before, there's this notion of the 7-generation mindset. It comes from an indigenous mindset, probably Native American, but frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if it's in multiple cultures throughout the world. Mm-hmm. But you have this idea of you live in the middle of 7 generations on either side. So you have the 7 generations that came before you and the 7 generations that will come after you. And all of your decision making should be considering those people as agents in your decision making. And so if you did that and you said to yourself, what would my 7th generation grandfather think about this choice? Disregarding the fact that he's never even seen a computer,
right.
we can still consider their judgment making. And we can think about the work that the generations have put in before us to get us to where we are. Because this idea of inheriting the world is that the world wasn't a blank slate when I was born. It already had a lot of things going on. So I've done a fair bit of traveling in my life, and one of the things that's so remarkable to me is to go outside this country so I've been in particular, I felt this way in Southeast Asia. So when I was in Southeast Asia, I saw things that had been around for hundreds of years, thousands of years, and I'm like, these places already existed before I ever even considered coming to them.
Yeah.
Before I was ever born. There's so much momentum, and I want to honor that momentum when I make decisions. I want to go with that flow. I don't want to be like going against that flow or across that flow and then wondering why shit goes wrong. I'm like, well, because there's this cultural momentum that you're not attending to.
Yeah.
And I keep on pulling this back out and zooming way out. But Andrew's right when he talks about he takes on too many new things and then they fall apart.
Yeah.
But if he insists on maintenance first and says, okay, my maintenance takes up 75% of my attention span, which means I got 25% of my attention span to try to start something new. So I'm only going to start one new thing, and I'm going to see how much of my attention span that takes up. And maybe it only takes up 10%. And then you can start another one, right? And you just do this incrementally so that you don't destroy the things that you already have.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's that. I also used to be the type, and Ben really, like when Ben lived with us and we were running the mushroom farm, kind of helped me a lot with seeing infrastructure as sexy versus
sexy infrastructure.
Oh my goodness, man! Like nothing gets been going like infrastructure, but I used to okay, hey man, look at that! Somebody's selling goats on Craigslist. Let's get the goats. Oh shit, we got them home. How are we going to contain these goats? That's not the way you do things. That's not a responsible stewardship. That's not a responsible way of going about. You should have a plan to get goats. You should put in the infrastructure to handle goats, and then you should do your goats, right? Go get them and
because goats.
Yeah, but I mean also with rabbits and quail and with pretty much anything else. It's just it's getting into just being a responsible person in a way. Something some people take for granted. It's just easier for some people, I feel like, than it is for others. Some people were trained in it.
Some people were born. I mean, there's temperament. Temperament's a big part of it, and unfortunately, temperament's a hard part of it. And we have to learn how to work within our own selves because Andrew has all of these techniques for how he manages his ADD, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
I come in and I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, this is my ADD method, man. And I'm like, all right, if that's how it works and you get your work done, then I'm gonna judge, but then I'm gonna be forgiving also. So I don't know. He doesn't operate the way I operate, and that's okay. That's okay.
Well, and there's another thing that was shown to me too, which is when you take on too much, and one of those projects is losing its luster. One of the things that you can do. So Ben brought this to me from the open source ethic, which is before you abandon a project that you've created code-wise or whatever, a code base. Let's say that you've got a code base and several people working on it. If you're the front man, you don't just abandon that project. You find someone else suitable to manage that project, or as suitable as you can find, right? Like you do your due diligence to go through and find someone who's still willing to connect the dots, someone who's still willing to talk to all the coders and people, like update things and make decisions on what's good and bad additions and this kind of thing. So
how can you apply that ethic to mushroom farming specifically? Or how have you?
Well, for me, it's with all the future forward stuff, like when we do the aerated LC or the mushroom breeding or the bioprospecting or the spalting, or anytime I get excited about anything new and I want to start that project, if I don't have the time and infrastructure in place for it, because I've got other projects going on that I know I need to hand that off. Another thing is knowing the type of person I am, that I hate the day-to-day. I have to find someone to cover the day-to-day aspect to make sure that's going to get done. I can help, and on lots of days I do help. Like lots of days I will go in with Samantha and start fulfilling orders or backing grain spawn or do other things like that. However, it is better for me and better for the company typically if I can focus on future forward things. And then Samantha, lovely as she is, like I say every time, she is the person that really shows up day to day. She enjoys that grind. She enjoys the checklist, and she enjoys the checks that she gets to put down on a checklist.
That's true.
Yeah, and so
you show me a wall, I want to climb it.
Yeah, it's
one handhold at a time.
And
she climbs a handhold with a pen in her mouth, and she checks that handhold.
That's right.
Checks that handhold. Checks that handhold.
And so, in my day-to-day, my daily life, my married life, I have found a partner for that. People knew I loved Jackie whenever he was working for us, because Jackie did the day-to-day things. He made sure to talk to people, do orders going out, answering the phone and everything else. So he was that day-to-day guy. So it's really just about finding that again. After Jackie went and took the job with the 911, Samantha and I were like, oh crap, how do we do this? And then we just fell into it, found other ways to make basically Samantha more efficient, and she's taken on the day-to-day stuff that we had Jackie doing. So
There is something to be said, though, as well. I would build and get ready and put up all the fences and build the nest boxes to certain specs and everything else forever before ever taking the plunge and getting anything.
yeah.
Andrew forces me to move forward in a lot of ways.
And Samantha forces me to stay grounded.
Yeah, so I think we complement each other in that very well. And also, as far as like how many things that you can concentrate on, not overwhelming yourself. Charles is actually the one that brought priorities to us. And
yeah, I've talked about
this.
Yeah, I think we spoke about it last week, and we spoke about it several other times too. So,
yeah, there's an author named James Clear who's got a book out now called Atomic Habits. Actually, the book's been out for at least 5 years now.
Yeah.
But 10 years ago, he was writing a blog. I forgot the name of it now, but it was before he wrote his book. And I found his blog, like I said, 10, maybe even 12 years ago, whenever it was, and it was really significant. And I was able to look at, he was breaking things down, and one of the big things that came out of that period of my life was really developing a method for filtering through all the things that I want to do and coming up with a top priorities. And then, like I was saying earlier, you work backwards from those priorities and you set up actions that will get you to those priorities. And, we've actually made that kind of like a exercise that we go through as a group of friends. We've done it actually formally as as a Monster Creek Mushrooms board, at least on one occasion. But then we've also just done it as friends before, where it's like, let's sit down, let's take, literally we've done, it's like, let's take half a day and let's sit down. We're going to spend an hour doing this, and we're going to break out. We're going to do this. We're going to have some lunch. We're going to do some more. Like if interesting of people.
Right. At this point in my life,
but we are.
Yeah, my priorities haven't really changed in about a year or so.
I mean, mine are writing and wrestling and making enough money to eat.
There you go.
And that's about it. So, one thing that Andrew didn't mention a moment ago that I wanted to bring up, he was talking about when I was talking about the passing on the open source ethic of passing on the thing that you can't do, is he does do that with his Discord. So the Mossback Discord is a place where Andrew, I know, has on occasion been like, here's this thing that I want to work on, and here's my initial research on this, and I really don't have the time to do this. Is somebody interested? And if someone pipes up, he's like, cool, let's meet, let's talk about it, let's go over the details, and then I'm going to hand this off to you. And I actually know that Andrew has had some of his projects go out into the world, get worked on, and then come back.
Oh, yeah.
And they've come back to him, and then he's been able to pick them up in the form that they came back. And that to me feels like beautiful. Like I would love to...
Funny enough, in the absence of having someone to take over the project, what I've done is make a video on it and then put it out in the world. So, like, the aerated mycelium, I was like, oh, this is successful, but I don't really have a good way to plug this in my operation right now. I don't have I've got to focus on other things, like, at the time, my physical health and whatnot. And so I just made that video. And then, what's it been now, a year and a half, 2 years later, I've got several people who have shown me that they are using it, for various tasks. They've shown me their setups on how they're using it, how they've made it less risky to do, how they're using it either to make grain spawn or go straight to bulk substrates, that kind of thing. And so, I love that aspect of it because it does come back to me. So, I'm not trying to do it for any, I just wanted to hand the project off, and it was nice to be able to I'm not profit off of it, but to have it come back to me.
Well, like I said, I think it's beautiful. I think it's really beautiful. You basically just have this child, right? This baby, this child, this idea, which is a child of yours, and you say, I'm going to put this idea out in the world, and I'm going to hope for the best. I mean, in a certain sense, because you put it out on YouTube, you think about there's every view is an iteration of that idea, right? So it's almost like, corn flowers, for example, are wind pollinated, right? So you have this sort of you have seeds on the wind, you have little pollen in the wind, and that's what your idea was, is this little pollen in the wind, and then one day it germinates and becomes a thing, and then you go walking down the road and you're like, holy crap, I recognize that. That's something that I had something to do with.
Absolutely.
It's cool. Anyway.
And it is very easy to want to do all of the things, and it is far harder to want to hold yourself back from doing the things that you want to do. So, I mean, it's, there's a lot of things that I want to do, and I have to sit there and think, okay, well, these are the things that pay the bills and make money. And, Andrew as well. And so we have to kind of hold ourselves back and do the bare minimum so that we can do the things that we want to later, and then those can change, seasonally or whatever. And I'm sure, you, Charles, probably feel the same way in some things. And I know folks in the chat do, certainly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Why don't we move on to the next topic? I think we've done a really good deep dive on this one, and we've gone kind of all over the place. And so that topic was the topic around maintenance. The second topic has to do with preparation as opposed to protection. Before I do the aphorism on the protection versus preparation thing, I want to create a little bit of context for this. I have this philosophy that has to do with parenting, where I see parenting in a really, really like rough sense as this continuum of protection leading towards preparation, where you have a child that is literally helpless. I mean, when it is born, it is so helpless. So the only thing you can do is protect it and care for it. But the older it gets, the more you know that in America, when it turns 18, it's going to leave the nest, hypothetically. I know I'm using the word it. Don't worry about it. I get called out for this all the time. It's just a bad habit. But I don't have children. That's the reason why children are its to me. I love children. I love children. I just don't have them. So anyway, you have a child, and the older it gets, the more your job as the parent becomes preparation of that child, because you need that child to be prepared to live out in the world. Mm-hmm. And if you don't prepare it, then you'll be stuck protecting it, because it's going to come back to you. It's still your responsibility. I have a really good relationship with my parents where, like, I know that I can always, my father is like the most reliable person on the planet, right? If I needed him, he would be there, period, which is a really, really significant foundation stone in my life. But my father also would really, really, really like it if I didn't need him. and that's okay. Like, my father did his job to try to prepare me to be an independent adult. And so that's when I talk about preparation and protection, this is kind of the big picture that I have in mind. So I want to read the aphorism, and then I have another question, and then we'll just kind of do a little free-flowing thing again. So my aphorism for the preparation section is, every danger you tuck away out of their sight robs them of the chance to overcome, to grow stronger. It is not their destiny to walk overlong in your footsteps. Now, my question is also for Samantha, and I want to ask you to tell us about how you have found yourself resisting the urge to overprotect your mushroom crop.
Oh man, Andrew can tell you all about this. Well, I will clean and clean and clean and clean the grow room until I will have wasted away my entire day on cleaning the grow room. That's one way that I overprotect, and the way to resist that is doing weekly standard operation procedures, essentially, where we have a set designated section that we work on, and we can spot clean everywhere else. But Andrew has explained it to me in such a way that made sense to my OCD brain, which is, beat it back. Make sure that you are doing everything in small amounts, and eventually those efforts will compound over time, and they'll snowball over time to an overall well-being of the grow room, well-being of the business in general, well-being of our own children. Everything is in good measure. Everything is with time and small amounts of effort. And so that's how I resist, is knowing that my small efforts will build, and I don't have to exhaust myself into pure exhaustion just trying to make everything perfect. So there's my answer to that.
Well, so I'm thinking about some of the things that you've told me about, where sometimes when you overprotect them, it actually results in a subpar product.
That is also true, and that's something that we discussed earlier. Is if you keep things too clean, you prevent your crop essentially from being able to fight anything. So if you put antibiotics in your agar 24/7, if you you just baby the absolute HE double hockey sticks out of everything, you're gonna end up killing your strain library. So that's something else to consider.
So
sure.
I've been working alongside Samantha for about a month now, I think, in production, and something that she's talked to me about is how in the early days, anytime they ever saw any contamination on a bag, they would immediately throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
But over the time, they've gotten more and more where they're less picky about contamination, and in fact, they've seen where if a bag has a small amount of contamination, not like completely colonized, but just a little bit of green here or whatever, that it can result in an even more robust flush. Hypothetically, and we're kind of making some assumptions here, but you've got this bag full of mycelium that's under attack, and so as a consequence, it expends more energy than it would otherwise, right? It's got pressure being put upon it by the pest, and then it creates a better crop.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen, golly, 4-pound first flushes off of a block that had a very small. I'm not, and actually I remember putting aside examples, so I might run over there and get those whenever you guys are talking. But I'm not talking about taking an entire bag that is fully contaminated and opening the darn thing up. I'm talking about like just a small section on the very back corner, and then you can use that to build the forward momentum of your crop to, fight that and then be more robust because of the threat and the ability to overcome it, that practice. So, yeah, I think I'm saying that the way I want to. Anyway. Is that more of what you were kind of looking for in an answer?
Well, so I wasn't looking for a specific answer, but yes, I mean you're addressing the specifics. But yeah, I mean I'm thinking about like what can you be doing. So you were talking about the negative effects that overprotecting had on you, which you answered that initially, and I actually hadn't even been thinking about that, but I like that because that's important in the sense that if you burn yourself out trying to protect them, then you won't be able to protect them going forward.
Yeah. That is a very,
I think there's
real...
multiple layers to this, so by all means, you
yeah.
answered that. Andrew, you got any thoughts on this topic?
For some reason, I can't remember what Samantha said exactly, but I was, I guess talking about systematizing things. Oh, that's what she was talking about the first time around, which was how the overprotection affected her. And the thought had just come to me to what I try to do on a regular basis is systematize everything. So, like, if there's a known problem, contamination in the grow room bags or etc., then I just try to change the system and continue to do the weekly work. Whereas, like, Samantha will throw her body like straight up in the breach, right? Like she will work herself to save those little babies. Whereas I will say, you know what? No, we'll just allow the system to continue to work, fix and tweak the system, and then step back. My thought being that every time you throw your body in the breach, you rob yourself of the ability to see what the system is going to do. And again, that would be more along the lines of the, overprotecting the babies and the effect it has on the person versus the crop itself. But, yeah, that's the only thought I've really got on that.
Well, it looks like Samantha's coming back with
Examples.
some bags to show examples of, so let's give her, like, just a second or two to get through the door. She's bringing them in right now.
And because, as you guys can tell, everything is different tonight. We kind of threw things together, and so there are some wires and stuff she's having to navigate. But
that's also true. And kind of, going back to the way that we were raised, you mentioned it.
don't forget about the microphone.
A little earlier with your parents. My parents raised me to be extremely independent. And sorry, I'm a little out of breath from the trek and going through that.
Catherine said you guys are babies. I like that. We are, I guess. Anyway, sorry, Samantha.
It's all a matter of perspective.
That's right.
But I went through a stage in my life where I was exposed to a lot, and then I went through a stage in my life where I was protected. And I feel like both shaped me into the person that I am today. And I'm very grateful for my parents and the way that they raised me. And I'm very grateful for the exposure that I had as well as the protection. But I feel like they set me up to be strong and to be independent and to honor them and to honor their principles that they taught me as well. But I'm still out of breath. Why? Anyway, this is a contaminated bag. Andrew can see it. Yeah, Great Wall of Contamination. It is contained within the bag, so it's not like everywhere. It's just inside of here. I would not plant this in the grow room.
No. No.
This is like 360 insanity. And in fact, I kind of intentionally did this one so that you guys could just see the amount of contamination that there is.
Hey, before you throw that out, let me swab that.
Sure. I mean, it's a beautiful color.
It is, yeah.
I also got I was gifted with a hex code scanner, I guess, for Christmas. And so I'm totally wanting to partner with one of my favorite paint makers. So hopefully here soon we'll have a whole paint line
Paint line, Trichoderma green.
Yeah, that we can paint the warehouse with.
Neurospora orange. Or would that be Neurospora sunset?
But this one, and this is actually larger than what I would like.
Yeah.
I would probably still not plant this one.
Look,
But
what's
if
the other side look like?
If I had a smaller amount right here, I'd be more okay with it. But the other side is completely white.
No, in that case, yeah, I'd plant that in a heartbeat. I would just plant that side.
See, I would, yeah, and this is kind of the difference between Andrew and
Clarify
I.
what you mean by that.
As in, like, this side right here that Samantha's showing. Samantha, can you pull that to your right just a little bit? There you go. So that side that, bring it closer to you. There you go. Where Samantha's got this, I would fruit it right there. What's the tall side look like?
The tall side?
The one that's away from you.
Wait, what?
The side that's, flip it around. Just flip it from the, no, let me see the long side. There you go. Okay.
No,
sides are
your
tall.
other left.
What about the
In
other?
fact-
Okay,
in fact,
now,
all the sides are
now
equally
completely
tall,
reverse it
so-
again. Now completely reverse it again. Okay. I would fruit right there. That's exactly where I would fruit.
When you say fruit, you mean you would cut the bag
I would
right
cut
there.
the bag right there and initiate fruiting right there. And that is far enough away from the trichoderma that I'm not worried about trichoderma outbreaking in my room. And I might only flush it one time and then get rid of it, but usually that one flush is going to be way larger than your first flush typically would be. So,
Or you could even flush it out of the bottom, if need be. If you are in the beginning of your, operation, you really need that money back or whatnot, or
Yeah.
you've invested a small amount and you want to get your first flush. That's the way to do it.
So we have block clients, or we as in Mossy Creek have block clients, and we've had block clients for years. In fact, I remember one of the times that I was involved on a day-to-day with the business was I was delivering blocks
oh yeah,
at one point in time. This is probably 7 years ago now.
All
8
the way
years
to
ago.
Atlanta, I might
and
add.
Virginia.
Yeah, so
In
I was
Virginia.
delivering blocks for Mossy Creek, and we've had block clients for years off and on, and we've had a lot of, we're always continuing to try to find a good balance to having block clients because it's tricky, because this protection and preparation thing, our values as a business may not be like where we fit on the continuum, may not be where you fit in the continuum, and that actually can be really challenging
Yep.
in a customer, in like a client relationship, because we'll have clients who, if there's any spot at all, they're like, I don't want it. And so so right now we ship some, and the shipping process takes like a day or two. How long does it take?
It
About
usually
2 days.
takes, if we ship
3.
Monday, it'll be there Thursday. That's all the way up to Northeast.
Yeah. So, you can imagine that if there was a very, very like a pinhead small bit of trichoderma that we didn't see when we packed it, that by the time it gets to the Northeast in 4 days, it could have grown to a quarter size. I'm not really super well versed on the growth rates, but just using your imagination, there's a way that something like that could happen. And so then they'll be unhappy that there's a contaminated block. And what Samantha in particular has been trying to convey to people is like, look, plant it anyway.
Yep.
Plant it anyway and see what happens, and people will like not want to plant it because they don't want it to contaminate their grow room, and it's like, it's not gonna.
Right.
That's not how it works. Like once these things are colonized, like that contamination happened during the whatever you call that process. It didn't happen right away.
Absolutely.
Initiation.
Thank you. I need a term. I need a technical term here.
My bad.
Somebody help me out. Andrew's over here in La La Land, and I'm like staring at him like, give me a technical
I'm sorry.
term.
I'm running the command center.
Yeah.
He is running. There's a lot
Anyway.
of buttons over there.
There's a lot of buttons, and there's some fun stuff going on in the chat, and then my ADD kicked in, and I started like just spacing.
Yeah.
So my bad.
So anyway, that can be a really tricky challenge where you have different. So somebody in here earlier was in the chat was talking about, I forget who it was. It might have been Matt McCullis was talking about
liquid culture and contamination on top.
Well, no, somebody was talking about different looking. Oh no, it was Mycology Farms. Mycology Farms was talking about different grow ups looking different as a sort of reflection of the person.
Okay.
And I think that's really relevant to this, is that different risk tolerances affect how you run your operation. Ben Dooling, for example, is really, really structured, like
Oh my goodness, yeah.
super structured. And like he was here this past October, and listening to him and Andrew talk, I'm like, you guys could not be more different.
It's true.
I was just like, because Ben's like so structured and so organized, and
Pre-planned.
And he's like, Andrew, I really want to do business with you, but you're so hard to pin down. And Andrew's like, Ben, I really want to do business with you, but you're so hard to listen to. Obviously, I'm being a little bit in jest here. They get along extremely well, but those tolerances really do impact how you grow. And Samantha will say that thing is fine, and someone else might not. And so I know that that's become a topic in mentorships in recent years. Has been, you guys have been encouraging people and saying, look, don't overreact.
Yeah.
Don't overprotect, and don't overreact. And I think those two things kind of go hand in hand. Overreaction is kind of like a form of overprotection.
Absolutely. I would agree.
Yeah, and there was also another question earlier about, if we still did mentorships. You just mentioned it, so I figured I would plug that in real quick as an.
I just sold 2 mentorships this past week, so.
So what he's trying to say is, if you want to get one, you should get on it, because the schedule does fill up.
It's true.
It does.
And
He's not trying to brag.
This year I'm not trying to brag. And in fact, I've been told by many, many people I need to sell myself more, but
You should brag more, Andrew.
I should. But I will say, so our mentorships are kick-ass. And because I'm good at what I do, and Samantha's good at what she does, and we tend to surround ourselves with people who are good at what they do. But beyond that, we're not stacking them as deep this year. So, in the past, we might have 6 mentees at the op. We're not doing that anymore, so the year is filling up faster than it normally would. And, of course, we're buffering. Catherine did ask, can we do a Thursday on financing?
Due to liability reasons, I would rather not touch that.
Yeah.
As far as
I
like
can't.
taxes, she asked about taxes earlier. But maybe we can find someone who can talk about tax terms and things like that. But it all differs from state to state too. So.
Well, and just like there are podcasts on mushrooms, there are podcasts on financing and podcasts on taxes, and the reality is that it will be wise to trust the experts within their domain.
Yeah.
And
A lot of times
there's a
if
lot of free or state funded resources to help small businesses. And
Absolutely. And
I ran a tree service for a number of years, and I've been involved in Mossy Creek, and there's a lot of resources, and there's a lot of free resources or cheap resources, or if not cheap, they're like sliding scale resources.
Yeah.
So
there are some accountants who will even give you like a 30-minute free, like if you'll just come in, show me your stuff, I can give you very quick, easy advice. Like anything customary, it's kind of like me. If you call the shop and you're like, I've got this question, it's going to take you less than 30 seconds to answer, I'll answer it. But then if I have to think about something, you got to pay me to do that.
Well, also, if he has to think about something, you need to schedule his time.
That's true,
because you got to realize that this is an organization that doesn't have a dedicated phone answering person.
That's true.
The person answering the phone is also multitasking at the same time. So really, truly, if I wanted to learn something, I would say, hey, I've got a short question. I'm considering a mentorship. I'd love to schedule some time to talk to you for like 15 to 30 minutes. so that I can ask you my questions and so that I can see if I'm a good fit for mentorship. And I'm telling you, if you did that, you would get a better answer from Andrew or from Samantha for that
That's
matter
true.
than if you just call them and expect them to drop what they're doing and attend to you. And that's just, I would consider that just common courtesy, but I don't operate the way that some people do. And I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to say, like, you can get better results if you consider the consequences of your actions.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. You had a third topic, correct?
Yeah, I do have a third topic.
And then we've got the Q&A.
We can go on to the third topic, sure.
Okay.
So the third topic has to do with what I was calling orientation of actions to the process rather than orientation of actions to the goal. Remember, these are all a work in progress. I know that's not that catchy.
I was going to say, that one's not a real ringer, buddy.
Yeah, right. If you read the essay, you'll see that I didn't even necessarily categorize it in that way in the essay. This was me trying to kind of like make it concise for the sake of speaking it. So the essay generally fleshes a lot of this stuff out a lot more. But so here's our aphorism for this third section. It goes like this. There are no ends, only means. You will not be judged by your works themselves, but by the sacrifices you made in the name of those works. And you can kind of read a lot into that. The big thing for me is that I kind of mentioned this earlier, that people will justify bad means to get to what they believe to be good ends, and they'll sacrifice their quality of life in the present tense for some future promise that may never come. And then there's also this notion of the works, but like me personally, I've gotten more and more interested in not what the work is that you did, but like how you did the work, the time that you put in and the effort you put in and the etc. So and how you did the work in the sense of this stewardship concept of like, putting in the work and not damaging others in the process, or not squandering the resources. Like, could you have done that same amount of work with half the resources if you had planned it better? That sort of thing. So that's what I mean when I say like you'll be judged on how you pursued the works. So my question this time is for Andrew, and so I'll say like, we live in a culture where people are getting really bent out of shape about where things are going. People are really focused on that future and not as focused on the present. And one of the things people are really bent out of shape about is this Anthropocene extinction that we kind of are living in. It depends on who you subscribe to, and that's not really the point of this podcast. So let's not get too in the weeds. But let's say things are dying out and humans are having an impact, right? And what I want to talk about and what I want to ask Andrew to tell us about is Andrew has this project that he calls the Mycology, which I don't think he's talked about on this podcast. And I think that projects like the Mycology are an answer among many answers like this to some of these problems, like these extinction things, looking at these big problems in the future and bringing them back down to like what can we actually be doing rather than stressing about the thing. What's the work we can be doing now? So Andrew, what can you tell us about what the Mycology is and where you think it's going?
Sure. So the Mycology, the phrase is coined by a guy named Jordan. Oh my goodness, Sveta, what's his last name? Duckworth. My goodness. Yeah. By Jordan Duckworth, and it's really a project. It's the bioprospecting project. We've been talking a fair amount about that the past few episodes. Charles is talking about the reason why it's really near and dear to me, which is, if indeed we are seeing climate change, if indeed we are seeing this major level extinction event, if it doesn't really matter. In my own town, I'm seeing large swaths of forest cut down, cleared, stumps being pulled out, etc., for housing development. Who knows what they're slashing and burning and killing? It's certainly, not giving stuff a chance to spore out and continue, like going, hey, excuse me, we're about to burn down your home. You should spore out a little and and continue on getting those genetics out. So what we're trying to do is, in part, collect as much biodiversity from the wild as possible. And as a part of that project, I don't want to collect just local genetics, because likely what is happening to me here is happening in other places. And if there are other crises happening, then obviously it's all the better. And even if nothing bad is happening, we don't know enough about genetics yet, especially fungal genetics, to know what is useful and what is not useful yet. So on so many levels, it just makes sense to me to bank cultures. And when I found out that other people are passionate about this, but some people lack the skill, or some people have their own minor projects going without the same reach that I've got, then we wanted to start this actual project where people are mailing me mushrooms. If they don't have the resources to actually clone them themselves, they're literally either making stem butt spawn and mailing me that, or just overnighting me the mushroom themselves. If I can get it cleaned up, I'm mailing people back a free kit or culture of that type. But the big thing for me is that it's allowing me to bank cultures from, we've got a wild blue oyster from Austria, a wild blue oyster from Australia, a wild pink from Australia, and then all, of course, local genetics. The Tennessee Valley, Ben Erickson and his wife Stephanie they love hiking. They just hike together,
And running marathons.
And run marathons and all this stuff. But they also love mushrooms. So every time they find oysters, they bring us oysters, and we clone them. So we have them all over the place. And then, of course, this is, Samantha and I have traveled. We've collected reishi from Georgia and all kinds of stuff from the Albright Grove, lots of hericiums from the Albright Grove and old growth forest. And it just continues on. But this is what the Mycologian project is it's a passion project that in part doesn't rely on grants or anything else to have its existence justified. It's just being run by us. And then the way that we're helping to pay for this is either through the sale of what are obviously good genetics right now, or sometimes bringing some of this stuff back into the breeding program and seeing if we can help, bring some of these more robust or interesting oysters for cultivation.
Acclimated
works in part, but it's not just that. It's a texture and phenotype thing, and there's a bunch of stuff that goes into it. But that's I guess in short what the Mycologium is.
And you'll see names like Ben Found and the Miles oyster and the DeRitter oyster.
Yep.
It's either named after the person that found it or the area that it was found in.
Yep. Or sometimes some crazy part of its look or phenotype or something.
Yeah.
So.
I have the claim to fame to being the finder of the first ever wild strain that went into commercial production within Mossy Creek Mushrooms. So I am Pathfinder from Pathfinder's Oyster. And so if you've ever bought Pathfinder's Oyster, that's me. And I was, at the time, living and working in the Pacific Northwest, and I found that on the trail on the job, and I was multiple days out from home because I was working in the backcountry as a botanist. And so I snagged that oyster and packed it up in a toilet paper roll and a bit of it was I think it was a sardine can. Yeah, it was like a sardine can with some toilet paper.
Prince Albert's.
And so and then when I got back to the front country, I mailed it back home, and Andrew was able to successfully clone it from that, even though it had spent 3 or 4 days in my backpack and then however many days in the mail. But he got that, and it's still, one of our better strains.
Some of our top sellers, and easily my favorite, one of my favorite eating oysters that we've got. Now,
absolutely,
we call it the teacher a lot of times, and then we had someone tell us that screw calling it the teacher, you should call it the dominatrix.
The dominatrix. Yeah.
Because
I heard that just the other day, and I was like, all right, I can dig that.
Well, because it is such a delectable oyster. The first stop, you want that every time, and it refuses to give it to you until you really figure it out, till you really give it what it wants. And now Samantha and I
Sounds to me like it's just the tease.
apparently it is, but like we've got it now. Like cutting back on our supplement. Actually, I thought that was really interesting. Is that
starving it is
Yeah.
what worked.
giving it less nutrition, giving it less easy to eat food, actually made for a better. Like it ended up producing perfectly almost every time now for us.
Well, that sounds kind of like the protection versus preparation conversation too.
You're absolutely right. That
Not
does.
overfeeding it, not, yeah.
Oh yeah, but yeah, that was the Mycologium project, and yeah, you're right. You're the first entry into it, really.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Andrew and I have been talking about this Mycologium for years, but recently we were talking about something that really kind of like struck a chord for me. He was talking about, he's been playing with a terrarium again, and he was telling me about these pill bugs that have been artificially selected to look like black and white cattle so that they can have cattle grazing on their little pastures. And it was something that there's all manner of these sort of like very specially selected insects or shrimp or fish or all kinds of stuff in this whole world of, small contained environments, whether they're terrariums or aquariums or all the eums, I guess, apparently. It's not really my field. Anyway, but I was thinking about that. I was like, that's, like that right there. These are hobbyists who are out there collecting wild genes or starting with, commercially available stock and then selecting for traits. And I just found it very inspiring to think that like the answer to human generated problems is humans, right? So you have these, disregarding for a moment all of the top down measures that may or may not be actually having a positive effect. I see stuff like these countless hobbyists who have their one niche thing that they're really into, and they're going to be doing all this work as a labor of love to save the genetics, collect the genetics, create their own little arcs like what Andrew's doing. And so you've got the Noah of mushrooms in Andrew, and you've got the Noah of pill bugs in somebody else, and you got the Noah of shrimps, and you've got all these little arcologies. And what's going to happen is you're going to have the gene stock necessary to then re-release. I'm an optimist, and so Andrew was talking about this, all this development in Tennessee, just tons and tons of suburban development, and you got all these old forests and old fields just being cut up and turned into cookie cutter houses, and it's really too bad, and it's definitely going to result in damage to biodiversity. But if we can hold on to the genetics now, if we can take action now, then when the culture is more receptive to preserving them in the wild, then they can be reintroduced. And in the meantime, they can be diversified even within these, more contained settings. So
Absolutely.
I don't know. I find it very inspiring, and I really do. Like, I look at this and I'm like, this is the kernel of the answer to extinction. It's humans that are interested in things that are not humans.
Yeah.
And there's thousands and thousands of humans on this planet who are just, for whatever weird switch that was flipped in their head, they're into that animal, that insect, that plant, whatever
That
it
fungus.
is. That fungus. So.
Yeah. Early in my life, I never would have thought I would have been into fungus, but it happens. But yeah, I mean, as the isopods, as soon as I saw the little rubber ducky ones, they literally bred these rubber ducky isopods where their faces and their shells are squished and then elongated like duckbills, and it's just, then you've got the ones that look like Holstein cattle and like a bunch of other stuff, and I agree. It's like, you've got all these people working in their garages, basements, businesses, etc., bringing this stuff in from the wild, and then, selectively breeding it, finding mutations or recessive genes and pushing those out. And then if there is a large extinction event happening, as there seems to be, then maybe that's partly the answer. Yeah, maybe that's not just banking the wild stuff, but the ability to diversify the wild that you've got in.
Well, and kind of going back to the book that you asked for and received this year. What was the name of that book?
Which one?
The one about selective breeding and the human
Unnatural selection.
unnatural selection. That's right. And
Such
it was,
a good. It's an illustration book, but it's such a good
the
one.
illustrations are absolutely gorgeous.
Lots of
Like
pictures.
I appreciate it very much.
So Samantha at one time considered being a medical illustrator, and this book, yeah, like I think she's looked at it more than I have because it's really just a book, Unnatural Selection.
Yeah, it was
Almost
actually
entirely-
his gift, and then I kind of stole it from him.
Well, it's almost entirely illustrations of skeletons of different birds and whatnot, but also like they take dog skeletons and illustrations of dog skeletons and go, okay, here's what the whatever terrier looked like 100 years ago, 50 years ago, and now it's what a modern one looks like, and it's like, whoa, this stuff is really like selective breeding has really changed things. So.
Yeah. Did you do the other commercial that we had planned on?
No,
Did
I
you have
haven't.
time
We're
for it?
going to do that right before we go into the Q&A. So
Okay.
I was going to make sure that Charles was getting with his. So. Oh, you said okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this has been good. This
Yeah.
has been, everything that I hoped for. I hope it's been good for you guys.
Absolutely.
I hope it's been good for the folks, watching. I know we've had a lot of difficulty with the
servers.
servers.
Yeah.
So we're going to run another short little homegrown Musty Creek Mushrooms ad for y'all, and then we'll do just a proper Q&A. So if you have any questions that weren't answered earlier, I know there were a few like specific technical mushroom growing questions that we kind of just said we'll hold those for the end. You might pop it back into the chat again, especially since we've also had, this is the third version of the chat, so bear in mind that if you said it in the very beginning, we might have lost that chat. So if you have any questions, go ahead and start putting them in the chat, and if you have any questions or thoughts on the stewardship stuff, by all means we can continue to work that angle as well, but we do want to give folks time to talk about the mushroom growing.
Yep. Absolutely. So yeah, go ahead and start throwing your questions back in there in the chat just to make sure that we've got an up-to-date list, and then enjoy.
Introducing the future of mycology, Dr. Silurian's Elixir of Mycelial Mastery. This isn't your average culture mix, it's a revolution in a packet, crafted for the dedicated cultivator seeking unparalleled growth. Experience the visual alchemy of this masterful brew. As you mix 10 grams with 500 milliliters of water, watch the solution transform into a rich, amber spectacle, the hallmark of a nutrient-dense sanctuary for your burgeoning mycelium. This is where vibrant color meets vibrant life, setting our elixir apart from the ordinary clear liquid cultures. Prepare to be captivated. Mix 10 grams of Dr. Silurian's elixir with 500 milliliters of water, add a stir bar for thorough integration, and sterilize the blend at 15 psi for 45 minutes. Once cooled, introduce your favorite culture into this perfectly prepared, nutrient-rich environment. Watch in awe as the elixir works its magic, unveiling a mycelial masterpiece before your eyes. Choose Dr. Silurian's Elixir of Mycelial Mastery for a mycological adventure that's as visually enchanting as it is potent.
All right then. So, introducing Dr. Silurian's Elixir of Mycelial Mastery. This is, guys, it's just our own blend. It's the stuff we use here in the shop. I have formulated a mix that really helps produce, a really thick mycelium and provides for really good nutrition. So a lot of people have talked to us about, like, can you just sell us a premix so we don't have to buy all the ingredients and make it? So we are doing it. Right now it's just in small packets, but pretty soon we'll be doing bulk as well. And Dr. Silurian is just a character I created a long time ago who is now an AI chatbot who writes some stuff for me occasionally. He's a humanoid amphibious frogman from the Victorian period, but also now been transported to the cyberpunk future. So, you know, like you do.
It's pretty awesome, and we decided to put it on the website because by popular demand. A lot of people have been asking for it, so it's on there now. You can go grab it if you want it. For those who have begged and asked, it's on there. So anyway,
Anyway. Well, okay. While Samantha's getting you guys into the chat, I can kind of see things as they're blowing by. So just real quick, someone said, "Doesn't that burn the sugars?" I caramelize my sugars on purpose, and I think you should too. Caramelization, the whole idea of don't caramelize your sugars, comes from bacteriology, microbiology from a bacterial standpoint and like a yeast standpoint. The great thing about white rot fungus, which is what we're all focused on here, is that white rot fungus can break down long chain polymers, right? Caramelized sugars are just sugar molecules, basically. And dang it. OBS Studio disconnected, reconnecting.
Oh.
Are you freaking kidding me? I don't know. It kind of seems like I'm still going.
You're still going on my end.
Okay, well.
My end as well.
Reconnection successful. Okay, I don't know. Or maybe there'll be like a short little hop out or something, but we'll see.
Now we need a T-shirt instead of Contam Fam. It's Glitch Team.
Don't tell people about the Contam Fam, Samantha. That hasn't been released yet.
I'm sorry.
Bad. I hope I get all right, Samantha, what you got for me in the chat? Let's do a rapid fire Q&A. Oh, by the way, guys, I completely forgot this the whole time. Like it, share it, comment, subscribe. Like it.
All right, so some of the I really wish that we hadn't been interrupted so many times because, like Charles said, we had some
good questions. I'm sure that were built up.
Yeah, and it looks like some of those folks didn't stick with us. So,
well, that's okay.
Maybe later I can find
maybe
those.
on a smoother chat, or like the last live of every month is supposed to be a pure Q&A. So that should hopefully make that easier as well.
So one of the first questions is, how long do dehydrated mushrooms last?
That depends. It depends entirely on how you store them. If you vacuum pack them, they last for a long time. If you just dehydrate them and set them in a jar, I'd say they'd last for about a year or so. But anytime you can rob oxygen from them, they'll last much, much longer.
And there's a lot happening. So
Good.
And my feed personally is jumping quite a bit.
Yeah, mine is too.
Okay, I'll ask some questions.
Okay.
So if a small op with one oyster strain wishes to have mushrooms ready each weekend, how often would they need to put LC to grain and inoculate pellets?
I would do it every week. So if I want mushrooms every week, I do every part of the job every week. That includes making grain masters. So LC to grain to make a grain master, grain to grain transfers to bulk up the amount of grain spawn you have, and then grain to bulk substrate inoculations. Just systematize it, do each step every week.
Okay. This is a question for me, actually. It says, how much carbon does a tree actually absorb? And so the answer to that is it depends on the age of the tree and the species of the tree and the conditions in which the tree is growing. But you have a bell curve where when they're young, they absorb at a lower rate. When they're intermediate in age, they are absorbing at their highest rate. And then after they reach a certain peak of age, they continue to absorb, but the rate goes down. There is a tool that the U.S. Forest Service created called iTree, where you can go in, you can plug in the species of the tree, the diameter at breast height of the tree, which is exactly what it sounds like, and the region in which you live, and it can give you the numbers. It can give you more than just carbon. It can give you a whole lot of numbers, and so you should check that out. Just Google iTree or Google U.S. Forest Service iTree, and nowadays there's a bunch of add-ons to it, but in the strictest sense, you can go in there, plug in the information on the tree, and you'll figure that out. Turns out that mushrooms also sequester carbon.
They do, but it's a little on a different scale, I guess. Yeah.
But so anyhow,
All right, it's I guess they eat the tree, And then
Yeah.
they release some of that carbon back, but then the rest of that carbon gets sequestered. Yeah.
One person said, "Doesn't that burn the sugars when they're?" Because they're talking about the
I answered
caramelizing.
that one,
Did
yeah.
you? Okay.
Yeah. I was
And-
telling them that we do it on purpose.
Hoping for a quick reminder / list of the strains you were talking about last week that go from LC to sub successfully.
Okay, so LC to the species that go from LC to sub successfully are primarily Enoki and Hericium species. That's pretty much it. So anything else really needs some sort of coddling or babying or trickery to get it there.
Okay. How about fungi flies laying eggs in bags?
Oh, that's a super bad problem. That's that's
Chuck it. Get rid
chuck
of it.
Chuck it, burn it with fire. The real answer is that's why we stay on a 4-week cycle. Is because it helps to interrupt the breeding patterns of the flies, and so even if I have, like, I could have gotten a second flush off my chestnuts if I'd let them stay 6 weeks. I don't do it. I just quarter my room and I just run through it. And if everything can't make it on a first flush, then I don't really, if I can't make my money back on a first flush, then I try not to grow that species. I try to do quick growing species.
And I absolutely look at the week after and the week before,
Yeah.
because like Andrew said, the room is quartered, and so you have 4 rows, and so I will spot clean the future rows as well as the past rows. Is that how you would think of that? And just make sure you get rid of anything with that.
Yep.
Period.
Absolutely.
So, as the number of growers explodes, are we sure that all of the spores we blast into the air is okay for the environment? Some fungi, like Ganoderma, are bad for trees in Florida. Thoughts? So, I'll jump in on this one again. There are already crap loads of fungi spores in the air.
Yeah.
So, not saying that we're not adding a significant amount. I really don't have the numbers on that. What I can tell you is that, so I worked in the tree industry for 7 years, and the general thought in the tree industry is that all of the pests that affect trees are in the environment, period. So the concern that we have in the industry is not the concern around preventing exposure. It's about maintaining the health of the tree in general. So if you have a tree that's been, okay, so for example, in urban environments, the 2 worst things are compaction of soil, and then, well, actually not the 2 worst things, but some of the worst things are compaction of soil or poor quality soil to begin with, where it's been scraped off and then something's been built, and then you've kind of got like a little patch of like potting soil and you plant a tree in it. So you've got really low quality soil. So when trees get stressed out by environmental factors like poor soil, like compaction from vehicles, like drought, like too much rain, like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, when a tree is stressed out, it becomes more vulnerable to the pests that are already in the environment. So your Ganoderma fungi, they're present. In fact, a lot of times parasitic fungi are actually laying dormant in the roots or in the interstitial tissues of the trees. And so in the tree care industry, there's nothing I can do to rid the tree of the fungus. In fact, most of the treatments that I would do if a tree was showing symptoms wouldn't be antifungal. There's a little bit of stuff that's antifungal, but mostly we don't even try to kill the fungus. We just try to help the tree do what it already does well, which is compartmentalize and keep the fungus from spreading.
Yeah. That book, Blight, that I've been reading, I mean, it talks about a lot of these spores can land and literally have soil build up over them and continue to be viable for decades, if not. I mean, they're finding spores in the permafrost that are supposedly 300,000 years old or something like that, and they're still able to germinate them.
Well, and hypothetically, they can withstand the vacuum of space.
Right.
So, I mean, they're like on asteroids and shit. And, apparently, we aren't the original organisms on this, original smart organisms on this planet. We're not the original spacefarers on this planet. The mushrooms are.
That's right.
Right, so,
And you were talking about the trees compartmentalizing. The fungus does that as well with the mold, and so there's a very similar transfer of defense mechanism in that regard too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a neat thing.
But they were specifically discussing in that book, like Blight, about the Cavendish banana being taken over by a fungus. And most of the treatments they do, other than slash and burn, there's not much they can do to try to treat the fungus. It's all about maintaining tree health in order to fight off the fungus, to fight off the blight. So it's interesting how just prevalent everywhere fungus is already. It's just everywhere, and dormant.
I've got another question here that says, after how many generations of clones do you go back to spores, and will the clones' spores have their own traits?
Okay, so you can, in this instance, you can think of mushrooms in along the lines of plants in this way. Seeds are spores, and spores are seeds, and the white mycelium that's growing is the thallus, the body of the mushrooms, much like the green stem and green leaves and whatnot, are the thallus, the body of the plant. You can clone a plant over and over and over again, as long as it shows good signs of health. And
Currently ready. So I'm going through and making sure and testing all of that to make sure it flows well first. And then we will have that test website that we're going to offer to our Patreon members, you guys here. And we're going to make sure that we kind of, give a nice discount there for you guys to test it out as kind of a perk of all of that. And so that will be up soon and open to the general public. And until then, the current website that everyone is familiar with will be up and running continuously. And so there is that. That answers that. But yeah, as far as overcoming burnout, not overworking yourself, those small daily tasks that we talked about and weekly tasks, just having a set schedule on everything. Charles mentioned, the other night about getting we were having an awesome conversation. Like, I need to get home. I want to be in bed by 10, because if I don't do that and wake up at the same time, I throw out the entire routine. So having a routine in the farm is paramount, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We're basically breaking production down to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and having that consistent familiarity is how I prevent myself from burning out. And then just ending things, if I can, at 5 or 6 o'clock.
Yeah, you have got to give yourself time off. As a small business owner, it becomes your identity.
Yep.
And you can very easily work much more than you should. As far as, when I say should, I mean according to your health and well-being, and not just like physical health, but like the mental, emotional stuff is insidious, and it kind of sneaks up on you, and you kind of want to just sort of like tough it out.
There were times when we were getting negative comments on our Google reviews of we never answer the phone and we never do this. And, it kind of to combat that, we sort of try to push forward and answer all of those phone calls. And we were answering the phone at like midnight and 1 a.m. in the morning, and it's not sustainable.
I think that's absurd.
Yeah, right.
I think that's super
Yeah.
absurd. I think it's absurd that somebody would expect them to. I think it's absurd of them to think that they should feel like they for them to feel obligated to.
Now it's reconnected. Okay.
Let's just keep going.
I was gonna say we'll keep going, and then we'll probably need to call it soon. But
Sure.
yeah, that mushroom, Samantha's handling it now, but it was sent to me by a fan of the show, and it was a really beautiful, nice gift. So everywhere I have moved my office, I have moved that mushroom.
Yeah, and on
There's
the bottom, he wrote, I was hoping it would have his business name on it, and Michael, your handwriting is atrocious. But it says April 14th, 2020, handmade by Michael Edeme, maybe? I don't know. I'm butchering that. But it says, for Mossy Daddy.
For the Mossy Daddy.
Anyway.
Ooh, dirty kinky. And then someone said, what is your bioefficiency if you're trying to grow 100 pounds a week, and how much substrate, I think is what they meant to type, would you produce? If I was trying to figure out how to grow, if I was basically trying to get somebody to grow 100 pounds of mushrooms, I would tell them to conservatively pack 50 bags a week. My number would be something like 33.3 is how many I would be producing every week to produce 100 pounds. But really it'd be 50. And then John Wheeler, no, it's not your signal that's bad, it's YouTube's. There's bad weather, and some of the servers have been messing up and going down, so.
That's what I was talking about.
Thallus.
Yeah. Sibilance.
Sibilance.
All right, what else you guys got for me, and then we'll do a few more, and then I
I
guess
think we've gotten through the
Can
bulk
master's mix be mixed with grain, sterilized, then inoculated directly?
If you do a pocket of grain, there is a technique I've seen where people do their substrate and then a layer of grain on top, sterilize, open it up, and then LC directly to the grain. Once the grain is grown in, they then shake the bag.
Or I've also seen where they'll do a pocket on a side, and then they'll have a injection port
Yes.
taped onto it essentially, and then you would just inoculate directly with your syringe into that pocket of grain, and then once it's colonized, shake it up as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Vance, I saw your question earlier. Hopefully you're still on here. About there being mold on top of the liquid culture. Anytime you see mold in a liquid culture, you just dump it. There is no salvage in it.
And hopefully you've done your backups on backups on backups, and you have slants, and you have agar, and you have your LC, and you're dumping it isn't you getting rid of the entire thing.
Yep. So, are there any Fed or state regulation permits hoops you have had to go through to sell fresh mushrooms to chefs? No, but God
We're
bless
very
Tennessee.
lucky. Yeah, we're very lucky that Tennessee supports small agriculture so well.
Yeah. In Tennessee, mushrooms are regulated like produce, so the same as tomatoes, cucumber, etc. And our state legislators have been very, very good about being very pro agriculture and farm. So they make things easier on us, not more difficult on us here. That said, that is the case for most states that I know of. Unless you live in a really kind of state, I think like Illinois, California are pretty heavily regulated. I think Georgia might have some. But surprisingly, I was really surprised when I found out New York State didn't really have hardly any regulations on it, so compared to stuff. But
It looks like Dawn is on here she came and did a tour the other day. So she's on here as well.
oh, nice.
Hey.
How you doing?
And then, see, the clothing line. When will someone make a clothing line from mushroom waste products? That is, I actually follow a girl.
I was gonna say.
As far as waste products go, I don't know, but I know that there's been a bunch of research in recent years on using mycelium as a feedstock for sort of mushroom plastics, but also mycelium as just like a textile base as well.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of these polypores, like reishi and stuff. If you ever boil them in hot water, you'll see them kind of delaminate. There's certain mushrooms, I think, called the amadou, that they've taken. It's a tradition in Central Europe for hundreds, if not thousands, of years, where they take this mushroom, boil it, delaminate it, and then card it into this leather material, and they literally make clothing and stuff out of it. Incidentally, it's actually very, very. It'll take to fire really quick, which is funny to me because the mushroom that it comes from is literally, I think the amadou is the tender polypore. But when you put it in that leather-like state, it actually becomes more flammable rather than a smolder. But
I think one of the problems of waste, of using the mushroom waste, is going to be inconsistency.
it is.
Anything like that. This is why recycling is so challenging. I guess these days, there's clothing that uses a certain percentage of the yarn is recycled yarns, right? But the reason that they only use certain percentages is because a lot of the time the recycled yarn that's available is not of as good a quality. And so what they'll do is they'll basically say, okay, we're technically dumbing down the quality of our total end product here, but we want to use recycled materials. So we're going to find the balance point where if we use 8% recycled yarn, we don't damage the quality badly enough that it's going to be a problem as far as our quality standards go. It's going to be the same problem with recycling mushroom substance. All that grain, which would have to be burned off, or I don't even know. I don't know enough about it. If it was to be done, it would be either technologically intensive or energy intensive or both.
So that just reminded me, there is a company called Mycovative, I think is what it's called, like Myco Innovative, but bacon substitute. Now, again, I will try it and then we'll see how it tastes. But it's literally like they're taking bread proofing pans and then putting these in an incubator and then growing aerial mycelium until it's these thick loaves. And then what they do is they come and take it out and they compress it really hard and slices and fry it up. Now, what's interesting about
if
that?
it tastes good, then
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, I'll eat it if it tastes good. But what's interesting about that is once you have the mycelium in an aerial form like that, there is none of that problem with the waste product. Like you do, like they've done with sheep's wool or any other natural fibers, or like they did with the spider silk fairly recently and made that dress, where you can actually card it and it's all going the same direction, and then you can spin it.
That sounds cool, but it
Yeah.
wouldn't be a waste product. It'd be the primary.
It would be a primary product.
But that's
yeah.
still, I mean, I think that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I'll talk about stemless mushroom too. Like, sorry, my brain skipped. I was thinking about it would be neat to make sort of noodles out of those as well.
Absolutely.
So Catherine's talking about wanting someone to take her spent substrate, and what I will say is that if you can figure out the arrangement, that is a good compost feedstock. We have in the past had folks come and get it by the trailer load. The problem that we've run into is the manual labor associated with taking the plastic bags off. And so Andrew and Samantha have had to pay their employees the time that it takes to take the plastic bags off of the spent blocks, and then they're not recouping the labor costs, much less anything else, when they got somebody coming in and taking these truckloads of stuff away. So, people aren't going to spend hundreds of dollars on this, and the labor just adds up. Not saying it can't be done. It's just, I mean, if you put it on Facebook Marketplace, you can probably find somebody to come and take your stuff. But I don't know. There's just minor complexities associated with it that make it not smooth.
And really just market it. Here lately we've been marketing it as kind of a living mulch, essentially. So not only are you supplementing your raised beds